So let's give it up for Dr. Barry Williams.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Oh, that's good. That's much better. So, tell me a story, Dad. Tell me a story, Mom. How many of you have ever said that? You remember. You didn't want to go to bed, did you? No. Yeah, it was your stall tactic. It works every night in the Williams household as well, because stories are such an amazing way to teach, right? And so we use stories. And so kids love stories. They love story time because it's usually right before nap time, before whatever. But at the end of every story, there's usually always a moral, right? And stories are an amazing tradition that our society has set up. It started, the only way you could get any information is by listening to a storyteller. They used to sit in a square and they used to tell the news that way. But clearly today, we have lots of ways of hearing stories, don't we? We have lots of good ways of hearing stories, but then there's also ways that we've seen some bad ways of hearing stories. But all in all, storytelling is still an important aspect of teaching and learning, because in stories, there's always somebody, usually called the hero or the heroine, that goes through some sort of challenge and eventually leads into a new direction. Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Man with a Thousand Faces. He tells the notion about what the journey of the hero is all about. And in the journey of the hero, the hero's journey, he talks about this concept of which a person hears a call. Now, you've seen many of these heroes' journeys, haven't you? I know you have. You may not have known it. Has anyone ever seen a movie recently, like Harry Potter, maybe? Has anyone seen Star Wars? One of my favorite movies. You know, like Luke Skywalker? Yeah. Right? Luke Skywalker is a classic hero who goes through the journey. He hears a call. He becomes, he finds friends, becomes a Jedi, and then has to battle his father. Only to then go on to a new journey. We each are called, just like Joseph Campbell says. All of us are called to hear something, to hear a message. My alarm went off. It was Sunday again. I was tired. It was my one day to sleep in, but the guilt I'd felt the rest of the day would have been too much, so I'd go and I'd pray. I showered and shaved, adjusted to suit and tie, and got there and swung into a pew just in time. Bowing my head in humble prayer, before I closed my eyes, I saw that the shoe of the man next to me was touching my own, and I sighed. With plenty of room on either side, I thought, why do our souls have to touch? It bothered me so much. He was glued to my shoe, and it didn't seem to bother him very much. Then the prayer began. Heavenly Father, someone said. But I thought, does this man with the shoe have no pride? They were dusty. They were worn. They were scratched from end to end. What's worse, there were holes on each side. Thank you for the blessings, the prayer went on. The shoe man said a quiet amen. I tried to focus on the prayer, but man, I was glued to his shoes again. Aren't we supposed to look our best when we come walking through that door? Well, this certainly isn't it, I thought, glancing toward the floor. Then the prayer ended and songs of praise began. The shoeman was loud, sounding proud as he sang. He lifted the rafters, his hands raised high, while the Lord surely must have heard his voice from the sky. Then the offering was passed. Oh, yes, indeed. What I threw in was steep, but the shoeman reached into his pocket, oh, so deep, and all I could hear was a soft clink, as when silver hits tin. The sermon bored me to tears. Wow. And no lie, the sermon bored me to tears. And no lie, for the shoeman, it was the same, as tears literally fell from his eyes. At the end of the service, as is custom here, we must greet our visitors and then give them good cheer. I was moved inside to want to meet this man, so after the closing, I went and I shook his hand. He was old. His skin was dark. His hair was a mess. I thanked him for coming and for being our guest. He said, "My name is Charlie. Glad to meet you, my friend." and there were tears in his eyes, but he had this wide grin. "Let me explain," he said, wiping his eyes. "You see, I've been coming here for months, and you're the first person to say hi. I know I don't look like the rest, but I always try to give it my best. You see, I polish my shoes before my long walk. By the time I get here, they're as dirty as chalk." My heart fell to my knees, but I held back my tears. He said, No, I need to continue. I have to apologize for sitting so near. I know when I get here I must look like a sight. But I thought, if I could just touch you, our souls might unite." I was silent for a moment, knowing anything I said would pale in comparison, so I spoke from my heart, not from my head. "Oh, you've touched me and taught me in part that the best of a man is what's in his heart." What did you think about that story? How did that story move you? What were you thinking when you walked through this door tonight? It's a Friday night. There's a whole lot of other places that you could be. When you came in and walked through this room and you went to sit down in your seat, what were you thinking? Did you look for someone that was just like you? Did you look for someone that made you feel comfortable? Do you love the you that you are? No matter what your shoes might look like, your hair. Do you love you for you? How do you share your love with others? You ever just touched someone's soul? What are you called to do? How does the Spirit move inside of you? How do you know when you are ignited like a spark? How do you find your voice among all the voices that you hear every day? How do you choose to share your voice? Will you try tonight to touch someone's soul? When I was an undergrad, I was an RA, one of the greatest jobs in America. Because you get free room and board and a little stipend. And then you become like this big, cool assistant hall director kind of guy, and you get your own little apartment on my campus. And then that's cool because you get your own shower. It's pretty awesome. Until you're on duty. That sucks. So one night, I was on duty, and of course, on a Saturday night when you're on duty, there's nothing going on, right? And Saturday night, in my residence hall back at my undergrad days, was the perfect night for you to get your laundry done. That's correct. That's the night to get the laundry done. No one else is doing laundry on Saturday night except for the dorky RAs. That's right. And it was all good. Things started great. I had a lab report due the next day, Monday morning. I was a chemistry major. Of course, I look like one, and I act like one all the time. And I'm right. That's right. Director of Athletics, chemistry major. Don't ask. I'll tell you a story later. Anyways, but long story short, here I was with my laundry, gonna do my lab report. Yes! Until, that's right, the first call came. The second call came. And then the final call came at like 3 in the morning. There was 100 drunk Greek fraternity brothers with another 100 drunk Greek fraternity brothers beating their brains out on the beach that overlooked Lake Michigan right outside of my residence hall. It was like WWE. Bodies are flying everywhere. I run outside. It's just chaos. And one of the greatest moments that occurred was when the Kenosha Police Department showed up. And yes, that's right, I got to walk around with them and their billy clubs. It was awesome. It was really cool. And the night went on, and the night went on, and the night went on. And I felt like I was up till like 6 in the morning, and literally I was up. I don't remember going to sleep that night. But I do remember one thing. At some point I did pass out. But I remember having to wake up the next morning, still on Sunday, having to do a lab report, only to find out that yes, my laundry that I thought I had put in actually was still in the washer, and yes, I had mixed the reds with the whites. So much for that. And so that Sunday, I was cranky. I was very cranky, very angry, very upset. And I moped around all day. And anyone that I saw knew I was cranky, because I was not afraid to let them know how disappointed I was that they dragged me out to that beach and had me do all of this stuff. That night, we had Catholic Mass. So as is custom on our campus, we had Catholic Mass at like 8:45 at night. And I still had a lab report to do, but duty called and I decided to go to Catholic Mass. Now normally, at Catholic Mass, there were quite a few of us there, but for whatever reason on this night, only a couple of us showed up, and our Catholic campus pastor, or Edith was her name, her Catholic campus minister was there, and she brought a local priest in, and she always baked cookies. It was really cool. But there were only a couple of us, and we had a lot of cookies left over. And so she says to me in her infinite wisdom, "Oh, Gary, why don't you take these cookies back to the residence halls and give them to all of your friends?" Yeah, right. I was like, friends? I mean, they kept me up till 4 in the morning, blah, 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 blah. You know, I was not a happy camper. She's like, "Oh, Gary, forgive." And I was like, forgive? I'm about to take them and you... So I took the cookies. That's right, I took the cookies. And I walked back to my residence hall and walked in the front door and I said, "Hey, you want a cookie?" Whack! And just started whipping cookies at people. It was the best time of my life. Walking around that building, just throwing cookies at people. "You want a cookie? Hey, yeah, Seamus, you're back there, right? Here's a cookie." Whack! I didn't even care if I even knew who the person was. I get up to my floor, and now I'm up on my floor now. Now I'm really ticked off, because these were all the people that kept me up. And I look, and there's this guy, Glenn. Crazy Glenn. Glenn with the long hair. You know, like Iron Maiden, black shirt, rah, you know, skater punk, death or die, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, captain of the football team, Mr. Fraternity guy. We're like, not even close. And Glenn walks up to me and I'm like, "Hey Glenn, you want a cookie?" And Glenn kind of looked and he stared at me. And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, here, have a box of them. And go skate down the hallway." And off Glenn went. So I go back to my room and I close the door. And I'm like, "Dad, I'm happy now. I gave away all those cookies. Now off to my lab report." And I remember starting to type my lab report. And I'll never forget, I heard this. And I woke up with a start. Now there was drool all over my desk from me typing my lab report. And I heard it again. And the first thing through my mind was, not again. Another night just like last night? And I go to open the door and I'm like, "What?" And there's my hall director. He's like, "Gary, come quick." I'm like, "Now what?" He's like, "It's Glenn. He just committed suicide." I said, "What?" "Yeah. He walked down to the train station an hour ago. And he isn't going to make it back." And I thought, like, skater punk? Iron Maiden? Goofy hair? Yeah. And there I was, 22 years old, 21, walking down the hallway, and I put a young man's possessions into 3 black garbage bags. And I don't know if anyone has ever heard the phrase, "A pat in the back is only 6 inches from a kick in the keister." But that's kind of how I felt. I was really happy at first because I gave Glenn a cookie. But then I realized I didn't really mean it. When you get what you want in your struggle for self and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't what your father or mother or wife upon whose judgment you must pass. The fellow whose verdict matters most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. Some people may think you're a straight shooting chum and call you a wonderful guy. But the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look him square in the eye. He's the fellow to please, never mind all the rest, and he's with you clear to the end. And you'll pass your most dangerous, difficult test if the man in the glass is your friend. You can fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass. But your final reward will be heartache and tears if you cheat the person in the glass. Whose shoe do you need to touch? And who should get a cookie from you tonight? Only you can answer those questions. You are called every day to be a light to someone in darkness. And if you only do it when you're actually called, then you're really not answering the call. Some people will forget what you say, and they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Have a great night.